After 27 years of being the family ATM, I finally broke when my siblings conspired to exclude me from my mother's last Christmas. I've been debating whether to post this for weeks, wondering if I'm overreacting or if I truly have reason to feel so betrayed. The holidays are over, but I'm still processing everything that happened. I guess I need outside perspective since I can't trust my own families anymore. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, me, 42, my brother Jake, 39, and my 2 sisters, Ellie, 37, and Caitlin, 35. Our dad died when I was 15, leaving our mom to raise 4 kids alone. As the oldest, I stepped up early. I got a job at 16, helping with bills while still in high school. I didn't go away to college despite getting into several good schools, instead staying local so I could continue living at home and supporting the family. I worked full-time while taking night classes, graduating with my business degree after 6 years instead of 4. That pattern never really stopped. When Jake needed money for his first car, I covered the down payment. When Ellie got pregnant at 20 and her boyfriend disappeared, I helped with baby expenses and childcare costs. When Caitlin wanted to attend graduate school, I paid a significant portion of her tuition. When Mom's roof needed replacing 5 years ago, guess who wrote the check? This isn't me keeping score. It's just been my role for so long that everyone, including me, took it for granted. I've never minded, honestly. I was fortunate enough to land a great job in finance after college and have done well for myself. I have a comfortable life, a nice home, and no kids of my own. Helping my family felt like my purpose, especially after Dad died. Mom always said I was just like him, responsible, dependable, the rock everyone leaned on. I took pride in that comparison. What I didn't realize until recently was how this dynamic had warped our family relationships. I was seen less as a brother or son, and more as a resource, a family bank that existed to solve problems but wasn't necessarily included in the actual family experiences. I'd noticed small things over the years, not being consulted on family decisions until money was needed, being the last to hear about important news, my preferences being overlooked during gatherings. But I dismissed these observations, telling myself I was being too sensitive. The real wake-up call started this past summer. Mom's health had been declining for a while, congestive heart failure that was getting progressively worse. Her doctors had been clear that this would likely be her last Christmas. This hit me particularly hard since I've always been closest to her, calling her daily and driving the 2 hours to visit her at least twice a month, far more than my siblings who all lived closer to her than I did. In July, I was on a business trip when Jake called to tell me that he, Ellie, and Caitlin had decided to move Mom into assisted living. They had already chosen a facility and put down a deposit. When I asked why I hadn't been included in this decision, Jake said they didn't want to bother me since I was so busy with work. I was hurt, but swallowed it, focusing instead on making sure the facility was high quality. I ended up covering nearly 70% of the monthly costs since none of my siblings could afford their equal shares. Fast forward to November. I called Mom to discuss Thanksgiving plans, assuming we'd all gather at the assisted living facility, which had a nice private dining room families could reserve. She sounded confused, saying, "Oh, I thought you knew. Everyone's going to Ellie's this year. They said you couldn't make it because of work." I was stunned. I had no work commitments for Thanksgiving and had never told anyone I couldn't attend. When I called Ellie to ask what was going on, she was dismissive. "Oh, Jake mentioned you were swamped with year-end stuff, so we made other plans. It's nothing fancy, just a small thing." I explained that I was absolutely free and wanted to be there. She hesitated before saying, "Well, we've already planned for just us. Maybe you can stop by for dessert?" Stop by for dessert? Like I was an acquaintance rather than family? I was deeply hurt but didn't want to make a scene, especially not to Mom who was already dealing with so much. So I agreed to come for dessert, spending Thanksgiving morning alone before driving 2 hours to join them. When I arrived, I found them all finishing dinner, with Mom looking tired but happy. They'd clearly been there for hours. There were empty wine bottles, used plates, and a general sense that the real celebration had already happened. What stung most was overhearing Jake's wife tell someone on the phone, "Yeah, the whole family's here now," only after I'd arrived, as if I were an afterthought, not really part of the whole family until physically present. I stayed for about an hour, feeling awkward and peripheral, before making an excuse to leave. No one tried very hard to convince me to stay longer. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. This wasn't just poor communication. It felt deliberate. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe they really had misunderstood my work schedule. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Then came the Christmas planning. Given Mom's condition, I wanted to make this Christmas special. In early December, I called a family meeting via Zoom to discuss holiday arrangements. Everyone seemed distracted during the call, and when I suggested we all spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day at Mom's assisted living facility, taking turns staying overnight in her guest room, they all had reasons why that wouldn't work. "The kids need to be home for Santa," Ellie said, though her son was 16 and her daughter 14. well past believing. Megan and I already have plans with her family Christmas Eve, Jake added, referring to his wife. I can only get Christmas Day off work, Caitlin claimed, despite having told Mom the previous week that she had the entire holiday week free. I offered compromises. I suggested we do Christmas Eve morning through to Christmas Day evening all together, allowing for evening departures. I offered to hire a Santa to come to the facility for any young cousins or nibblings. I even proposed renting a nearby Airbnb, where people could stay overnight if the facility's guest room wasn't enough. Every suggestion was met with vague excuses or half-hearted agreement that I could tell wasn't sincere. Finally, Jake sighed and said, "Look, we appreciate you trying to coordinate, but we've actually already worked something out that's best for everyone. We're going to do Christmas Eve at my place since it's closest to Mom's facility, then bring her to Ellie's for Christmas Day." "That sounds perfect," I said, relieved that at least a plan was in place. "What time should I arrive? On Christmas Eve?" There was an uncomfortable pause before Caitlin said, "Well, we were thinking it might be better if you came for Christmas Day instead. Christmas Eve is going to be pretty cramped with all the kids, and you're coming from further away." Something in her tone made me press further. "So I'm not invited to Christmas Eve?" Just to be clear. More uncomfortable silence followed before Jake finally spoke. "It's not that you're not invited. It's just that we thought it would be easier for everyone. This way, you can have the special Christmas Day time with Mom instead." I felt like I'd been punched. "Does Mom know about this arrangement? That I won't be there Christmas Eve?" "We thought it would be best coming from you," Ellie said quickly. "She'll understand. You're so busy with work anyway." That was the moment I realized what was happening. This wasn't about logistics or space constraints. They were deliberately excluding me, creating separate celebrations where I was allowed at one but not the other. And using my work as an excuse, work that funded their lifestyles and Mom's care, was especially galling. "I see," was all I could manage. I ended the call shortly after, saying I needed time to think about the arrangements. Then I called Mom directly. This was the conversation that broke my heart. "Mom, I wanted to ask about Christmas plans," I began carefully. "Oh, it's all worked out beautifully," she said, sounding happier than I'd heard her in months. "Jake and the girls have planned everything. Christmas Eve at Jake's. He's even setting up that old train set your father loved in the spare room for me to see. Then Christmas Day at Ellie's with all the grandkids. They said you might join us for part of it if you can get away from work." My throat tightened. "Mom, I don't have work. I've taken the entire holiday week off. I want to be there for all of it, especially Christmas Eve." There was a pause. "But the kids said you told them you were too busy for both days. That you had some important client thing on Christmas Eve." I closed my eyes, fighting back anger. "Mom, that's not true. I never said that. I've been trying to plan Christmas with everyone for weeks. They've been excluding me from the planning and now from Christmas Eve entirely." "That can't be right," she said, but I could hear uncertainty in her voice. "Why would they do that?" I didn't have the heart to upset her further, so I backpedaled. "Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Let me sort it out with them." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence in my home office for nearly an hour. 27 years of supporting this family, of putting their needs first, often at the expense of my own personal life, and this is how they treated me? I thought about all the times I'd rearranged my schedule for them, all the financial sacrifices, all the emotional support I'd provided, especially to Mom after Dad died. I decided to confront them directly. I created a new group chat with just my siblings, no spouses, and laid it all out. I asked them point blank why they were excluding me and lying to Mom about my availability. I reminded them of everything I'd done for the family over the years, and expressed how deeply hurt I was by their actions. I told them that if there was some issue with me, they should be adults and address it directly, rather than sneaking around behind my back. The responses were revealing. First came defensive deflection. "You're overreacting. It's not that big a deal. We thought you wouldn't mind." But as I continued to press, asking for specific reasons why I was being excluded from Christmas Eve, their true feelings emerged. "Jake, honestly, Christmas is always tense when you're around. You make everyone feel bad because you've done so much for everyone. Nobody can just relax and enjoy themselves. Ellie, you're so judgmental about how we live our lives and spend our money. Every time you help with something, it comes with strings attached. Caitlin, you always have to be the hero, the perfect son, the successful one."
Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? Mom compares us to you constantly. I was stunned. In my mind, I'd never been judgmental about their choices. Yes, I sometimes offered advice when asked, particularly about financial
matters since that's my profession. But strings attached? Being the hero? These characterizations were so far from how I saw myself that I could barely process them. I asked for examples, specific instances where I'd made them feel this way. The responses were vague grievances rather than concrete situations. "It's your tone. It's the looks you give. It's just a feeling we get. Nothing I could actually address or change." What hurt most was realizing they'd been harboring these feelings for years while continuing to accept my help. The narrative they'd created, of me as the controlling, judgmental older brother who lorded his success over them, was completely at odds with my own understanding of our family dynamic. In my mind, I was the supportive brother who helped because I cared, not because I wanted recognition or control. The conversation ended with Jake saying, "Look, we appreciate everything you've done for the family. Nobody's saying we don't. But this Christmas, we just want to relax and not feel like we're being watched and evaluated. Is that so wrong?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. I shut off my phone and spent the night staring at the ceiling, re-examining 2 decades of family interactions through this new lens. Had I been overbearing without realizing it? Was my help seen as meddling? Was I somehow making them feel inadequate when all I'd wanted was to support them? The next morning, I made a decision. I called Mom and told her I'd be spending Christmas Eve with her at the facility, just the 2 of us, before everyone else arrived for their celebration. I didn't mention the conflict with my siblings. She sounded delighted at the prospect of special time with me. Then I called the financial advisor who handles my accounts and made some changes to several arrangements I'd set up over the years. I had been paying for Ellie's children's college funds, contributing to Jake's mortgage, and covering Caitlin's car payments, all without them knowing the full extent of my support. I didn't cancel everything immediately, but I did restructure things significantly. If they wanted independence from me and my supposedly judgmental oversight, they would have it, completely. I also called the assisted living facility directly and paid Mom's fees for the next full year in advance. Whatever happened with my siblings, I wanted to ensure Mom's care remained steady. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. I drove to Mom's facility with her favorite takeout and a carefully chosen gift, a restored photo album I'd had professionally, done featuring pictures of her and Dad from their early years together. Photos she thought had been lost in a basement flood years ago, but which I'd secretly salvaged and kept safe. When I arrived, Mom was sitting by her window, already dressed. In the Christmas sweater I'd sent her the week before, her face lit up when she saw me, and for a few beautiful hours it was just like old times. We ate, talked about Dad, looked through the album, and watched her favorite Christmas movie. She dozed off toward the end, and I sat there watching her sleep, thinking about how this might well be our last Christmas together. Around 7, her room phone rang. She was still sleeping, so I answered quietly. It was Jake. "Is Mom ready? We were supposed to pick her up at 6 for Christmas Eve dinner. We've been waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes. I was confused. "Mom told me you knew I was spending the evening with her here." "What?" "No. The plan was for her to come to my house tonight. Everyone's already here waiting. The kids are asking for Grandma." I lowered my voice, stepping into the bathroom so as not to wake Mom. "Jake, after everything that happened, after you all explicitly uninvited me from Christmas Eve, did you really think I would just go along with that? Mom and I arranged this days ago. She was looking forward to it." "So you're holding her hostage to spite us?" Jake's voice rose. "That's low, even for you. Holding her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She's sleeping peacefully after a wonderful evening. I'm not waking her so you can parade her around your house after you deliberately excluded me from the family celebration." "This isn't about you," Jake hissed. "This is about Mom's last Christmas." "Exactly," I replied coldly, "which is why I made sure she had a peaceful, stress-free evening instead of being caught in the middle of whatever game you 3 are playing. She'll see you all tomorrow at Ellie's as planned." I hung up before he could respond and turned the ringer off on Mom's phone. She slept through the night, and I dozed in the recliner beside her bed, waking occasionally to check on her breathing, a habit I'd developed during visits over the past year as her condition worsened. In the morning, Mom was in good spirits, despite being a bit confused about the change in plans. I explained that she'd fallen asleep, and we decided not to wake her for the transfer to Jake's house. She seemed to accept this, though I could tell she was disappointed about missing the gathering. "They'll all be at Ellie's today," I assured her. "You haven't missed anything important." We had a quiet breakfast together before getting her ready for the day's festivities. I helped her dress in her Christmas outfit and packed her overnight bag for the stay at Ellie's. Throughout the morning, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my siblings, ranging from angry accusations to worried inquiries about Mom's health. I ignored them all. When we arrived at Ellie's house just before noon, the atmosphere was tense despite the Christmas music playing and the children's excitement. My siblings greeted Mom warmly but regarded me with cold stares. I helped Mom to her favorite armchair, made sure she was comfortable, and then announced I would be leaving. "Leaving?" Mom looked crestfallen. "But it's Christmas Day." "I know, Mom, but I have some matters to attend to. I'll call you tonight, I promise." I kissed her cheek, nodded curtly to my siblings, and headed for the door. Caitlin followed me outside. "So that's it? You're just going to drop Mom off and disappear? Make her sad on Christmas Day to punish us?" I turned to face her. "I spent quality time with Mom yesterday, time you all tried to prevent me from having. I made sure she had a peaceful night's sleep instead of being shuttled between houses in the cold. I'm not punishing her. I'm removing myself from a situation where I'm clearly not wanted. Don't be so dramatic, Caitlin said, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. Of course you're wanted, you're family. Am I? Because that's not how any of you have treated me lately. You lied to Mom about my availability. You excluded me from plans. You've been accepting my help for years while apparently resenting me behind my back. Caitlin at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. It's complicated. We do appreciate everything you've done, but sometimes it feels like we can never measure up. Like we'll always be the screw-ups who need your help. I have never, ever thought of any of you as screw-ups, I said quietly. I helped because I could, because that's what family does, but I've clearly misunderstood what family means to all of you. I got in my car before she could respond. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror to see her standing in the driveway, arms still wrapped around herself, watching me leave. The drive home was long and lonely. I declined several calls from Jake and Ellie, not ready to hear more justifications or accusations. When I finally reached my house, I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey and sat in my darkened living room, surrounded by the Christmas decorations. I'd put up for a celebration that would never happen. Shortly after midnight, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Megan, Jake's wife. Just wanted you to know your mom has been asking for you all evening. Whatever is happening between you and your siblings shouldn't affect her. Please call her tomorrow. I felt a pang of guilt. Megan was right. Mom shouldn't suffer because of this rift. I texted back a simple thank you and resolved to call Mom first thing in the morning. The days after Christmas passed in a blur of ignored calls, tense text exchanges, and sleepless nights. I spoke to Mom daily, careful to keep our conversations light and avoiding any mention of the conflict. She knew something was wrong, but seemed to accept my assurances that it was just sibling stuff that would resolve itself in time. What none of my siblings knew was that during this period, I was making major changes. I consulted with my attorney about removing myself from various financial entanglements with my family. I discontinued several automatic payments I'd been making for years. I updated my will, removing my siblings as primary beneficiaries and instead directing the bulk of my estate to a trust for Mom's care and then to my nieces and nephews directly upon her passing, with specific stipulations about education and age of maturity before they could access the funds. It wasn't until mid-January that the fallout began. Jake called in a panic because his mortgage payment had bounced. The extra money I'd been putting into his account each month had stopped. Ellie discovered that the college funds for her children were now locked trusts that she couldn't access or modify without my approval. Caitlin's car payment notification came with a warning that it was the final automatic payment from the external account, mine, that had been covering it. I hadn't cut them off entirely. That would have hurt the children and potentially Mom if my siblings had to redirect their resources. But I had restructured everything to give me more oversight and them less access. It was petty, perhaps, but after decades of unacknowledged support followed by deliberate exclusion, I felt justified in protecting my contributions. The confrontation I'd been expecting came on a snowy evening in late January. I opened my front door to find all three of my siblings standing on my porch, their expressions a mixture of anger and apprehension. "We need to talk," Jake said, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. The others followed. For the next 2 hours, we had the most honest conversation of our adult lives. There were tears, accusations, revelations, and eventually, a fragile understanding. They admitted to deliberately excluding me from Christmas Eve, resentful of what they perceived as my superior attitude and tired of feeling indebted. I acknowledged that perhaps my help had sometimes come across as controlling or judgmental, even when that wasn't my intent. But why lie to Mom? I asked, still unable to forgive this particular betrayal. Why make her think I was too busy with work to be there? Ellie looked down, ashamed. Because she would have insisted on you being included if she knew the truth. And we just wanted one family gathering without the tension, without feeling like we were being measured and found wanting. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? I asked quietly. To realize that you'd rather lie to our dying mother than have me present at what might be her last Christmas? None of them could meet my eyes. And now you're here because the money stopped, I continued, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Not because you miss me or value me as a brother, but because your financial situations are in jeopardy. That's not fair, Caitlin protested, though weakly. We came because we need to sort this out. All of it. The money is part of it, yes, but so is the family relationship. I laughed without humor. The family relationship, right. The one where I'm good enough to pay the bills but not to sit around the Christmas tree. Jake, always the most practical of my siblings, sighed heavily. Look, we screwed up. Badly. We were wrong to exclude you and wrong to lie to Mom. But you're wrong, too, if you think you can just financially punish us without any discussion or warning. Consider it a taste of your own medicine, I replied. You excluded me without discussion or warning. Why should I have extended courtesies you didn't offer me? The conversation went around in circles after that. They apologized, but I could tell they still didn't fully understand the depth of my hurt. To them, Christmas had been one isolated incident. To me, it was the culmination of years of being taken for granted, valued for what I could provide rather than who I was. We ended the evening with a tenuous truce. I agreed to restore some of the financial arrangements, particularly those directly benefiting my nieces and nephews. They agreed to be more inclusive and transparent about family plans and to address issues directly rather than avoiding and excluding. But something fundamental had changed between us, something I wasn't sure could ever be fully repaired. In the months that followed, our relationship settled into a new pattern. There was more direct communication but less warmth. Financial support came with clear terms and expectations on both sides. Family gatherings happened with all of us present, but had an undercurrent of caution, everyone careful not to trigger another confrontation. Mom's health continued to decline, and by spring, she moved into hospice care. This shared grief brought us together in some ways, our personal grievances temporarily set aside as we took turns staying with her, ensuring she was never alone. She passed away peacefully in April, with all four of us at her bedside. In her final days, she had made us promise to take care of each other after she was gone. "Family is all you have in the end," she told us, her voice barely a whisper. We all nodded, tears streaming down our faces, though I suspect each of us understood that promise differently. The funeral was beautiful, a true celebration of her life. Friends and extended family came from across the country to pay their respects. Throughout the service and reception, my siblings and I presented a united front, our recent conflicts invisible to outside observers. It was only afterward, as we gathered at Mom's assisted living apartment to begin the painful process of sorting through her belongings, that Jake found the letters. There were 4 of them, one addressed to each of us in Mom's shaky handwriting, dated Christmas Day, the day after my private evening with her at the facility. We each took our letter and found a private corner to read. Mine began, "My dearest son, first, thank you for last night. It was the most peaceful, loving Christmas Eve I could have asked for. Now, I need to tell you something important. I know what your siblings did. I heard you talking to Jake on the phone when you thought I was sleeping. I know they excluded you from the family gathering and then blamed it on your work commitments. I want you to know how deeply this disappoints me, and I have written to each of them as well to tell them." So, the letter continued, expressing her gratitude for everything I'd done for the family over the years, acknowledging sacrifices I'd made that I didn't even know she'd been aware of. She apologized for times she had taken my support for granted and admitted that she had sometimes enabled my siblings' dependence. She ended with a plea for forgiveness, both for me to forgive my siblings and for them to recognize and appreciate what I had contributed to the family. When we finally emerged from our separate corners, red-eyed and subdued, something had shifted again. My siblings looked at me differently, with newfound recognition and shame. Jake approached me first, letter clutched in his hand. "She knew," he said simply. "All this time, she knew what we did." "Yes," I replied. "She did. She told me, told all of us, that we had failed not just you but her and Dad, that this wasn't the family he died believing we would be." Jake's voice broke. She was right. One by one, my siblings approached me with genuine apologies. Not the defensive, qualified apologies of our January confrontation, but true expressions of remorse and understanding. For the first time, they seemed to see the cumulative effect of years of taking me for granted, culminating in the Christmas exclusion that had finally broken me. We didn't resolve everything that day. Decades of complex family dynamics aren't untangled in a single afternoon of revelations. But it was a beginning. Perhaps the first honest beginning we'd had as adult siblings, without the complicated presence of our mother mediating our relationships. In the years since Mom's passing, we've been slowly rebuilding. Financial support from me is more limited, but also more appreciated. Family gatherings happen regularly, with explicit invitations and confirmations. There are still occasional tensions, old habits that resurface, moments where I feel the familiar sting of being undervalued. But now, at least, we have mechanisms to address these feelings directly rather than letting them fester. This past Christmas was the test, our first without Mom. We gathered at my house, all of us together, a deliberate choice to create new traditions rather than risk old wounds reopening. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences and a few teary moments remembering Mom. But there was also genuine laughter, sincere appreciation, and a sense that perhaps, in time, we might become the family our parents had hoped we would be. I still don't know if I overreacted last Christmas. Sometimes I think my years of bottling up resentment led to an explosion that could have been avoided with better communication earlier. Other times, I'm convinced that the dramatic rupture was necessary, that without it, nothing would have changed, and I would have continued to be the family ATM rather than a valued brother. What do you think? Was I wrong to withdraw financial support without warning? Should I have confronted them earlier rather than letting things build up for so many years? Is there any way to truly move forward from such a fundamental betrayal? Or will our family relationships always be marked by what happened last Christmas?